We've been talking a lot about coronavirus and its impact on closures. We just had the Boston Marathon postponed until September 14th. But this Sunday, Disney World is going to be shutting down, as is Disneyland out in California. Dan Roberts covers Disney for us and much more, especially sporting events. And Dan, what's the latest that you can share with us? I mean, these closures are pretty dramatic.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Adam, because originally there was news that Bob Iger had sort of spoken to officials in California and managed to keep Disneyland in California open, even as it seemed like everything else was closing. That really only lasted an hour or so. And then finally, Disney clearly came to the decision, OK, we're going to close Disneyland temporarily. And still, there was about 12 hours there where Disney World in Florida was not going to close. And then that news also came out this morning. And on a personal note, I have a Disney World trip planned in April. So I'm hopeful it reopens because got to go to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. But, you know, I think every company right now is being over cautious. I mean, look at what happened with the sports leagues. It was such a domino effect. And I know we talked about this a little yesterday, but when the NBA suspended its season on Wednesday night, boy, I think that triggered a lot of closures, maybe even not just in sports. But yesterday when we saw, you know, New York City reacted and closed down Broadway and a lot of things, it feels to me like the NBA was a major domino. The NBA kind of lit the match on Wednesday night. And I think that whether it's sports leagues, whether it's concerts, you know, Live Nation said we're going to temporarily halt all tours. What they all realized is even if the people involved don't yet have the virus, the odds are likely right now that someone's going to get it, and the risk is just too high. And that's why you saw, you know, the NCAA, which dragged its heels for a couple days, finally say, okay, we're not going to have the tournament at all, as opposed to what it really wanted to be able to do, which was hold the tournament with no fans, because you can hold it in empty arenas. That protects the fans. But what happens when an athlete gets it?
Right. Dan, as we talk about all of these closures, the sports closures, the live music and live events closures, are we starting to get any estimates as to what the economic impact of all of this is going to be? I mean, we've seen certainly some of it reflected in stocks. Live Nation stock has been tumbled, but there's no NBA stock or, you know, some of these other sports leagues. So how do we get our hands around what effect this is all going to have?
Yeah, it's a good question. So let's think about all the different kind of financial partners that a sports league has. The biggest and most obvious one is broadcasters. Now, we were talking about Disney. Disney has Disney Plus right now, and there's the argument that while people are cooped up at home, they're going to watch more streaming platforms. Maybe people who didn't subscribe to Disney Plus will now subscribe. So at least that's kind of a bright spot for Disney. There's also separately talk about, you know, Mulan, this movie is being delayed. I'm of the mind, and a couple of people have said this on Twitter, that maybe Disney should just put Mulan on Disney Plus right now. Maybe it boosts subscribers. But let's talk about the leagues and their broadcast partners. You know, Disney also owns ESPN and ABC, and over at ESPN right now, boy, I think it is a wild time. You know, some of the ESPN reporters have come out and said that the only moment in recent memory that felt like this was covering sports after 9/11 or amid the fallout from 9/11. So what can they do? Well, they can still do live shows, studio shows, talking about the effects of the leagues being temporarily suspended. But how long can you really do that, right? I mean, how many days in a row can you do of having people like Scott Van Pelt discuss the coronavirus impact? I think you're going to start to see them re-air classic game replays. But again, you know, some of these broadcasters, you know, it's not like they only broadcast sports. So someone like CBS is going to be okay. They have shows. They have their CBS All Access platform. Maybe they're hopeful that they'll gain subscribers. Now, a really interesting story in regards to your question is the Olympics. What happens with the Olympics? Comcast CEO Brian Roberts did come out a couple weeks ago and said that they have some form of insurance if the Olympics are canceled. That's comforting to Comcast shareholders, but I'm sure there's still a number of other costs associated with the Olympics, you know, sending people to cover it if that event gets canceled. And actually, amid all the U.S. sports leagues suspending their seasons, we kind of have seen quiet on the Olympics front for about a week. So I don't know where that stands, but it's hard to imagine the Olympics happens at the time that it's planned. I mean, at least it's not until July, but the IOC said it has to decide in May. So we'll see what happens there because it's such an international event where all these countries send people. I don't know. If I were a betting man, I don't know. But I hope it happens as planned.
Hey, investors. Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.